fantastic. So anyway, this shift between focusing on local food to, wait, we can build financial systems and then use those financial systems to back a local food system. Hello everyone, my name is Reiki, and today I want to take you on an 11-year journey through what we call the Regenerative Renaissance, which has essentially been an ever-growing group of people who have come together to say, how do we build a world worthy of our children? Or, as Charles Eisenstein puts it, how do we create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible? And it's been a really long journey, and I'm going to try to do something impractical today. I'm going to try to tell a complete, comprehensible, yet concise story. And you can let me know if I've done a good job of this or not. Now, this is just my point of view, and it's a very limited point of view because I don't know everything that's been happening in this movement. And in order to tell a concise and comprehensible story, I had to simplify a lot. Now, I shared the deck for this presentation in the show notes. You can go down there and you can follow along, and there's a whole lot of links where you're able to dive deeper. Because in this series, I'm just going to touch on the high-level ideas and help us walk through the process and journey that we've been on from my point of view, so that we can share learnings. Because that's the key to this movement right now, is no one group or organization is going to figure it all out. What we need to do is to get better at learning together and tracking that progress of learning so that other groups don't have to relearn. So we've done 11 years of actively seeking systems change, and we want to share that knowledge with anyone else who's interested in, participating in this journey or being part of this. So who am I? I make maps. I hang out in 3 major domains. So it's in Hypha DHO, which is similar to a DAO for those who are familiar with that. We'll get into all those terms later. And the SEEDS DAO. So SEEDS is a regenerative economic system, while Hypha is like a new type of company. It's how do humans come together in a new way and organize differently? And then Hypha is building tools to help groups come together and organize differently. And we'll get into all of that stuff later too. But I share this to say my role has been to make maps. So as this ecosystem's been emerging and changing and dynamically growing, it's been my role over the last 7 years now, 11 years if you count the whole thing, to track change. What's going on, making sense of the emergence that's happening, which is the effort you see here. So here's me making another map, so hope you enjoy it. So what is the Regenerative Renaissance? Real short, and we're going to break this down throughout the rest of this series and really start from first principles, but the big picture is we're calling the Regenerative Renaissance this period of human history where we're shifting from exploitative and degenerative economies, which is what our current dominant economic systems are based on, to cooperative and regenerative economies. Because when we're starting from the point of view of how do we maintain civilization, how do we create a world worthy of our children for the next 7 generations plus, it's all about civilization. And when you look at what happens with previous civilizations and why a lot of them collapsed, it all came down to agriculture and how they met their needs, their basic needs of food. So this is the foundation, when we're really simplifying it, for civilization, is it's built on top of food. And then on top of that, we have our how do we scale coordination? And today we call this money and financial systems. So that's how we scale coordination across vast tracts of people and cultures, etc. As money is kind of that medium that brings everything down. And then on top of that is governance. So how do we coordinate with a little bit more accuracy? So we call these nation states and central governments and local municipalities, etc. And then on top of that is this piece I believe is missing, or it's just money, but it's what is the purpose? If you asked 100 people today, what's the purpose of civilization? You're going to get 100 completely different answers. And we believe that's fundamentally a problem. And why civilization's not actually meeting the needs of people and planet is because it's not necessarily designed to. When we think about it, how all of these systems, where they came from, they were designed hundreds of years ago, sometimes longer. They weren't designed for a global population of 8 billion people. They weren't designed to help us coordinate solving climate change or global war or political unrest. And all of these crises we're facing today, they weren't even designed to to handle those complexities. It's kind of like trying to play the latest massive multiplayer online role-playing game on the first Macintosh. It wouldn't even work. It wouldn't even compute. So every coder kind of knows this. When you're trying to build a new application, a new tool for a different purpose, you don't try and repurpose an existing tool. It's way better to start from scratch and build that tool to serve its purpose. So this is what we're calling the Renaissance, is we have fundamentally new technology that we didn't have before. When these systems were designed, we didn't have instantaneous global communication. We didn't have the ability to write algorithmic economic systems. The functionality that we have today wasn't even feasible or possible when all of these systems were designed. So what the Renaissance is really about is going down to first principles and saying, if we could design civilization to be regenerative, what would it look like? What would our agriculture and economic and financial and governance systems and all the way on up, what would they need to look like? And this has been our exploration. Because when we started this journey, we very quickly realized the system is broken. Well, it's broken if the system is designed to care for people and planet. It's not broken if the system is designed to concentrate wealth. In that case, the system is working exceptionally well. But we started off following Buckminster Fuller's advice, is to change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Today, a lot of people recognize, capitalism's broken, etc. But then they say, yes, it's broken, but it's the best thing we have. What we set out to do here is to create an alternative. To model, demonstrate, experiment, to build tools to make an alternative. So that we can no longer say, yes, it's broken, but it's the best thing we have. So it didn't take us long to realize, let's not try to fight the old system. Let's stop taking time. And, over a decade ago, I did spend a lot of time at protests and, trying to change the system from within, trying to use the current system and the tools that exist there to change it. Then I quickly realized the system exists to reinforce itself. We didn't step away from monarchies by asking the king nicely to give up its power. Now, this one's really important because it's how do we transition? Do we transition with chaos and fire and riots and destruction? Or do we transition with regenerative festivals where we're gathering together and having a beautiful time, planting gardens, planting forests, cleaning up our water, and building new types of economic systems and civilizations? That's fun. What else could we want to do in this life other than to come together and literally rethink the foundations of society from the ground up? This death of an old economic system doesn't have to be something that we fear. And in fact, this is how evolution happens. Evolution happens through death and rebirth and genes being passed down and DNA evolving. This is the process of evolution. So we can look at the old civilizations that have, they've been working for humanity for a couple centuries. That could be debated, but hey. And we can just look at them and say, yes, we've learned a lot. Let's incorporate those learnings and let's design a new type of system. So really it's about how do we midwife from one place to the next? How do we help that birth process happen rather than resist it, fight it, and spend a lot of time resisting the process? So if you want to dive more into this concept here, there's a video here where we explore lotus birthing a regenerative civilization and what does that look like. When we first were looking at the problem, one of the best solutions out there we found was permaculture and this concept of permaculture, the design principles that are baked into that philosophy of how, really it's how do we live in right relationship with our earth. But also, it's how do we be lazy? If you really want to look at it from one perspective, it's just way more efficient to design forest-like ecosystems. Because the best part that helped me understand this is no one has to go to a forest and bring fertilizer. No one's out there with herbicide and pesticide and all of this stuff for a forest to be productive. Yet forests are incredibly productive and provide food for millions of species. Humans as well. So what's really powerful is all of the evidence coming out that's showing that the Amazon was actually planted and stewarded. It's the giant food forest that the indigenous cultures have been living there for thousands of years, have actually intentionally created in right relationship with Earth. And then we see it as one of the most biologically diverse places on the planet. That is what humans have the capacity to do. If we're living as stewards of our Earth, we could be regenerating her every year and creating more diversity and more life and more abundance. And also creating systems that are more resilient and that don't require a perpetual management. Again, we don't have to go out there and make sure a forest is being productive. The synergies between all those species living in the forest make sure that happens. So it's really beautiful because today we've built very fragile systems that require humans constantly put in a lot of energy and time in order for them to stabilize and just exist. So regenerative systems have a high amount, so the energy that's getting put into them is in the design. It's really easy to design a monocrop forest. One seed, rows, tractor, there's a basic process now that we've kind of blueprinted. It's very difficult to design a food forest because they are very unique for every piece of land. In a monocrop, it's like, yep, is the land flat? We could basically use the same design. In a permaculture system, it's with the right relationship with the earth. It's understanding the earth and having a relationship there so we know what plants would best go where, which plants want to go next to each other, etc. So we create these ecosystems that are thriving in right relationship with the earth. And I'm going to keep saying that because it's so important for us to design our economic systems from that lens. Because the reality is if we don't design our economic systems to heal our planet and take care of her, none of these experiments we're doing right now matter. So we started digging into this. What is regenerative design? And this slideshow is shared in the show notes if you haven't seen it already. So feel free to... I've loved all of these books and so many more. And there's a link here at the bottom to go to see the recommended reading if you want to keep diving deeper. Okay, so after we realized permaculture, yes, this makes sense. We need to localize our food systems. We need to start with food because food is the foundation of civilization. Okay, what's next on top of that? Right on top of food as the foundation of civilization, it's how do humans come together and make decisions and do things. What does it look like if we start from first principles and we come together and we say, what is the point of humans coming together? We came together to help meet our needs. So we grab a group of people and we say, great, we're going to come together and we're going to make an agreement to help meet our needs better. Let's go up there and list our needs. What are they? Let's go up there and list all the resources we have. And then let's collaborate as a group to see how best we can meet our needs. And that's essentially what an eco-village is. It's a group of people coming together to say, hey, how do we best meet our needs? And obvious answers to that is we can plant gardens and grow food. It's a lot more effective and healthy to grow local food than it is to try to work and make money and then use that to buy food. And this person in our village loves growing food. They love permaculture. They love having a relationship with plants and getting to understand them. And it's such a beautiful, interesting world. That's their passion. So why don't we as a community just pay that person to be our community permaculturist and grow food in our neighborhood? And that's kind of the concept behind an eco-village is they're just coming together and say, hey, how do we live in right relationship with the earth and best meet our needs together? So it's a very practical first principles approach to building civilization. However, as you see up on this slide, that is a complete solution, yet it's incredibly impractical for the majority of people. 95% of them fail because most people have no idea how to go through a process of figuring out what their needs are, what their resources are, how do they make decisions, how do they handle conflict resolution, what is governance, how do we compensate people, what do they look like? And really groups come together and they spend a whole lot of time kind of trying to figure it out. So this is where we started focusing on solutions is, okay, then we need to start building templates that help groups of people come together and make decisions and figure out how they're going to set up their eco-village, figure out what their needs are, etc. So that's actually what you see here. You can click on this template and you can see a process that a group of people can go through to figure these types of things out. It's called our neighborhood. And that's one of the things we actually learned, kind of coming back for a second, is the word community is so loaded. That's one of the things and the baggage we're bringing with us. People think community is like, oh, commune, or, everyone's going to make a mess and I'm going to have to clean it up, or whatever. It triggers so much fear. So we created kind of a neutral term here, and we're like, hey, it's kind of like a neighborhood, but good. Imagine a neighborhood coming together and knocking down all their fences, putting up a food forest between their houses, sharing one pool instead of every neighbor having 12 pools they don't use. And maybe that pool can be a living pond instead of just a pool full of chlorine, so etc. But that's kind of the idea behind our neighbor good. It's let's not try to use words that are going to trigger all of these ideas of what people think they are. Because what's so beautiful about this Renaissance is we get to design it however we want. And very likely, the thing that's actually going to happen isn't in any of our heads yet. So whatever we think it is, it's not. Because we get to come together as a group of people and design anything that we can design and that we want to help each other meet. It's really beautiful. So when I highly encourage people who are talking about shifting into these old systems to start using entirely new language. Because that kind of blends into what we found out with Milestone 4 on our journey is we actually need to start with personal transformation first. Our culture is completely lost, the rites of passage and these really intentional ceremonies that cultures that's still alive today are doing, but they would help people shift and evolve throughout their life. Because these trials, these rites of passage processes are meant to challenge you. And what happens is they're designed to deconstruct your old identity, help tear that apart. Fasting helps this happen. Exposure out in nature, etc. There's a whole bunch of ways, climbing to the top of a mountain and fasting, etc. You hear about the stories, but this is technology. And this is the other technology we were exploring was the technology that interacts with our biology. How do we up-level and evolve our own capabilities that we innately have? We just don't know we have them or how to tap into them yet. So this is what we thought is we actually need to start here. But it is a much deeper journey to dive into what that transformation actually means and what it entails. And again, this is something that unfortunately, not a lot of people have access to. It's outside of the scope of possibility for most people's imagination to be like, oh, take 3 months off and go on this learning journey to discover myself. Yeah, good. I have a lot of bills to pay. And that's an intentional tool from the old economic systems to kind of enslave humans. So we got to this point where we're like, okay, the problem is deep. It's super complex. What do we do next? And at the bottom of that hole of consideration, we came to food. Because we thought, it's really difficult to shift our consciousness and understand what's actually going on here and go through profound shifts if we're chronically malnourished. And the reality is, humanity today is chronically malnourished across the board. Not just because we have enough calories. We're missing all of the vital nutrients that we're no longer getting. We're depleting our soils, so all of the micronutrients, all of the rare metals, all of the small things that only the biology and life and the ecosystems that live in the soil can help plants create. When we've killed those with all the herbicides and pesticides and the destructive processes to the land, the food that's growing in that is nutritionally void. It fills up our stomach, it gives us enough energy to run our monkey minds, but our bodies are depleted. They're chronically malnourished across the board. The only way to really overcome this is to grow food locally. So that local food, it's interacting with the pathogens and the biology and the air and the environment that you're interacting with. That's the food that's best for us. The food that's growing in our environment. And it's not rocket science here. This is how humans lived for most of human existence on this earth. By default, because we had to. We didn't have complex supply food chains. We can only get the food that we can go hand to mouth. So this is what we realized is we need to localize and love our food systems. And this was a pretty big shift for us. So this is where we dived in first. And we started this thing called Light Food. It's an ever-shifting, evolving, and adapting group of people that I've been fortunate enough to be with for the last 11 years. But now it's consisted of tens of thousands of humans that have come through this process and at least hundreds who have participated very intently to the DNA of all of these different systems that I'm sharing with you today. I just want to keep bringing that up, that I am the map maker here, and my role is to kind of share and illuminate everything that's happening in this ecosystem, not take credit for it. So to dive back in, the plan was grow food, not lawns. Peer-to-peer, homegrown, love-filled, local food. Mom's at home cooking food for the kids. Why not make an extra $100 making up a few plates for the neighbors? It was a very simple idea. and it was beautiful, and we loved it, and we started to dive in. We called it Crowd Food Network, and we started designing kind of a rewards-based system on this. But what we came to pretty quickly is peer-to-peer platforms that are routine, meaning they're routine interactions like food would be. You love the neighbor's pie, she's so good at it, you buy it 3 times a week. If there is a platform sitting in the middle of that exchange taking a fee, that platform would likely fail. And in fact, a lot of local food platforms that have tried this have failed because personal relationships are made. So how do we do a personal relationship-based local food system and have a platform and still figure out a way to pay for our developers to build it and for people to help educate people about it and to build all the tools we need, etc. So this is the problem that we were sitting with when we came to light food itself. So you can find some links to the light food deck and the light food paper if you want to dive in more. But it was a really simple idea, which we're going to really dive into for the rest of this video. And the idea is, if nations today can subsidize oil and gas at $5.9 trillion a year, which, by the way, they do, that was last year, which is absolute freaking insanity when we're in a climate crisis and we're funneling $5.9 trillion worth of value towards the problem, not the solutions. It's just mind-boggling how stupid, I'm sorry I'm this way, but how broken our old economic systems are. But they're able to do this because they have control of the money and the financial system. They're able to print money and then just distribute it and spend it how they would like, right? So we, of course, know this, and we're looking at the local food system. Fantastic. So anyway, this shift between focusing on local food to, wait, we can build financial systems and then use those financial systems to back a local food system. And now I'm going to explain a little bit more of what that means if people are completely new to this. You can also watch this video that's linked here, but let me dive in. And again, I'm going to keep saying this throughout the video because $5.9 trillion in subsidies, $11 million a minute is going to the problem, right? Another example of this that we are familiar with was Bitcoin spends $10 billion on electricity. So this is where we came to, is we're like, wait, Bitcoin is showing us that we can create new types of financial systems. It's also showing us that we can create a token out of nothing and that we can use this token to divert $10 billion worth of value to the electrical grid. And a lot of that's going to oil and gas too, right? But $10 billion a year goes to that. That's incredible. And it's another $3 billion on top for profit and buying miners and all that extra stuff. What if that money, instead of $10 billion to electricity companies, what if that $10 billion went to subsidize local food systems so that we can back this new currency by local food? We make that part of the agreement. We'll subsidize this new local community farm, but you got to make sure you accept this currency for the food if you want to, take this loan and take this grant, etc. It's a pretty basic agreement. Most people are for it because most people have no loyalty to central bank money because that money is inflating because the people who control those systems are minting money and doing whatever they want with it. So it was a pretty solid idea to get started with. And we said instead of 10 billion just going to miners, which if you think about it, and for people who are familiar with DAOs, Bitcoin is the first DAO. A DAO being a decentralized autonomous organization, meaning that it sets up a set of rules and it says, do this and you can earn a reward. But Bitcoin was generation 1 of this. They said, do this. They only named one thing. They said, do a lot of mining, a lot of hash power, which just consumes a lot of electricity. Do that, and you can potentially earn some Bitcoin. So it was a very simple model. They said, do something and you could potentially earn something. So that's the basic mechanics behind a DAO. And we said, all right, well, what if we evolve beyond that? What if we say, do a lot of different things? And there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can contribute and you'll get paid. Which will actually take you down to here because I skipped ahead a little bit. So we'll explore this more later. All right, bringing it back. Just stay with me and I'm going to keep explaining what all of this means as we go. So we said instead of that 10 billion, again, going to electricity, we're going to say, what if we sent 2.5 billion to regenerative businesses? For being regenerative, having an incentive to be regenerative. Right now, all the incentives for companies are be degenerative. Oil and gas are getting subsidized, so plastic's cheap. So plastic bags are cheaper than the biodegradable bags because we're giving $5.9 trillion in subsidies to oil and gas to make that the case, right? So we need to subsidize companies to be regenerative. So we said, all right, we're going to pay you to be regenerative. $2.5 billion, that's going to go to you. And since we're also paying you as an organization, we're going to want you to also use our currency to exchange with. So we're going to incentivize you as a business to accept this new currency for your products and services. So you're bootstrapping the businesses that want to accept your currency with some of that money that's going to inflation, rather than all that money just going to electricity companies. Same thing to communities. What if we just give local communities money for them to start doing local regeneration? Planting the trees we need to plant, cleaning up the water we need to clean up, the real on-the-ground regeneration that needs to happen. Let's just start funding communities to do that work. Great. But we also need to coordinate globally. Tools are global, development's global, blockchain development, etc. That's all global tools. So let's send some money to a global commons that's supporting the whole ecosystem, right? And we'll get into that later because it's really cool. And the last bit is then let's send money directly to people. We can set up our own form of UBI, but we're actually going to call it a universal earned income because you're earning it through contributing, and that's how you're earning your tokens. But there's a lot of beautiful ways to contribute. You can contribute by showing up on the governance platforms and participating and sharing knowledge and helping the process and our ecosystem evolve. You can earn from spending your tokens. And this is really cool with Seeds because we designed the first better than free currency. Because there's no transaction fees in Seeds because we didn't want another rent-based system. Because with any transaction fee or fee-based systems, there's always a small group of people that are collecting those fees and the majority paying them, or at least in most cases. I think new products in the Web3 space are figuring this one out, and it's really freaking cool what's happening in the space. But generally speaking, when we got started, we said no fees. We want things to be free because we want Seeds as a currency to be better than cash. That reaches back to our local food system. How do we get people to use that local peer-to-peer food platform where they wouldn't before? Well, that platform could be free to use. We're not going to charge you fees. And if you're using Seeds, it's better than free. So now it's actually better for you to use this platform and help build a local food economy than it is for you to go over there and use cash. Now we just made something better than cash because most cryptos aren't. Cash is instant, it's anonymous, it's free to send. I mean, cash is the best way to spend money if you're in person, right? So we thought if we really want, quote, mass adoption, if we really want this currency to take flight, it needs to be better than cash. And this is how we do that. Because spending it is one of the ways you contribute. Great, you're helping build our economy, you're actually using this currency as a currency. Excellent. We're going to pay you for that. And it's, again, a simple idea. Central banks are making trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars regularly. It's insane. And Bitcoin, again, spends $10 billion on electricity fees already. This idea is proven. That we can create a financial system and start paying people to do it, as long as everyone else agrees to that story. If we say, yep, we want a new financial system, we want it to work this way, we can make it so. So now I'm going to break this down into more details. So this is what happens when money goes to a regional commons. So we said, hey, let's send money right to a community, right? That community can take this pool. Let's say we gave them $2 million. Then they can say, all right, well, how do we want to spend this $2 million as a community? And we're going to get into tools that we've built to actually help communities do this. Really, really epic tools, but you're going to have to wait till later to hear about that. That community gets to say, hey, we want to give this money as a grant to this group over here that's planting trees and just doing regeneration. We want to give an interest-free loan to this local business to get set up. Or we just want roles in our community. So this is where things really start to fundamentally change. Take, for example, medical care today. It's completely broken. There's a medical report that recently came out from a bunch of hospitals coming together, and their main thesis in question was, is it profitable? Is it sustainable, actually? Is it sustainable to cure people? And they were talking about from a financial logic perspective, and their conclusion was no. Curing people is not a sound business model, and we're not going to be able to survive because our business logic requires routine customers. That is a failure of our economic system, for it to be better to keep people sick and perpetually treat them than to heal them. And it's not a novel idea or concept. Emperors all the way back in China figured this out, and they actually told their healers, I'm going to pay you every single day I'm healthy, and the days that I'm sick, we're not going to pay you. immediately realigned incentives. Now it's better to cure them, keep them cured forever, and you're just going to be cushy getting paid every day. That's the alignment of incentives we need to do with our economic systems. And roles help communities do that. Because now a community can get together and say, hey, we're just going to pay this healer because they're an incredible healer. We're just going to put them in a role. We're going to give them a salary and say, hey, you're the community healer. Just heal people in our community. Now we've just fully aligned it. Now they could be a healer, and it is totally within their alignment to just heal people and keep them healed. And not try to routinely treat them, otherwise they're going to be way more busy. If they want more leisure time, they want a community full of healed people who don't even need to call them up ever, right? So that's really powerful, because then communities have this resource coming in, and then they get to start pointing out roles in their community they want filled. You want to start having local food everywhere? Cool. Pay some permaculturists in your community to go out there and start guerrilla gardening and start planting trees and food everywhere, so you can start on your way to work. Imagine how beautiful that would be if you're walking to work and you're walking through a food forest and picking food along your way and tasting berries. Like, we can live in this world, and this is how we can start funding it, right? So part of that money comes down to regional communities. So I was talking to you about before, payments. So this is why it's been a long journey, guys. But we needed integrations. So we built all those. Open up the deck, click this button. You'll go to the site. Well, you can then take all these widgets, put them on your website, use them at your storefront. You can just print a QR code and be able to start accepting payments for free. Better than free if you start being regenerative. We'll get into that shortly. There's a digital passport online. And there's an app for this too on the Apple and Android. But anyway, I will show you all these apps. And again, there's links to all of these things throughout. This is one of two different ways that you have an account online to be able to send funds, make payments, and do all of that stuff, and so much more, which we'll talk about later. So here's the Light Wallet. Beautiful. Love this wallet. Highly recommend getting it. The beautiful things that we've done is social key recovery. So you've heard those horror stories of people in blockchain and crypto that, they lost their keys and now they lost all their money. What we've done is when you set up your account, you can assign 3 or 5 of your friends and family that if you ever lose your keys, they can recover your account for you. And it's a really powerful security feature that really makes these tools usable and lowers the risk of participation. You could do governance right in it, which we'll get into later. Voting and all that fun stuff. You could delegate your voice, so choose people to represent you in governance if you don't want to represent yourself. So it's kind of the best democracy. It's direct democracy if you want, or delegated democracy if you want someone to represent you. And we've also broken it out, and we plan to, that you can delegate your voice to every different category and topic of governance. So for example, how cool would it be if you could delegate all governance things happening in your country, all the food decisions you want this person, this permaculturist that you really love, they make really good decisions and you love the way they think, you want them to represent you. So you can just signal your vote to them, and then however they vote, you're just going to vote the same. And what's cool is at any moment you can take your vote back. So if they start voting weird and you don't like it anymore, it's like, oh, never mind, I can take it right back instantly. So you have this direct and delegated democracy system to start doing governance. And we'll get into governance more, but it's a huge thing that we had to, journey through. And then, of course, you could send and receive a bunch of different tokens and pay people and all that fun stuff. So this wallet is also used for communities to start making local currencies. And this is what Seeds is moving into next. And we'll talk about that more. All right, so as we started going along a financial system and saying, how do we build a new type of economic system? Then we got into governance naturally, because if we're building a new economic system that's by the people for the people, well, the people need to be in control. And this is where the journey started exploding, because once people were showing up and then participating in the evolution of the ecosystem, it got really chaotic and really exciting and really energetic really fast. And I know a lot of people actually within Seeds have got burnt out over the last couple of years because it's like, whoa, it's difficult to keep up with. And we'll get into how we're addressing that challenge a little bit later too. So it's only regenerative if these systems are truly controlled by the people. So governance is actually at the heart of all of this. It's, once we got in, it's like, yeah, we can design economic systems, but the real challenge is getting groups of humans to come together and coordinate, make decisions together and align. So this has been an incredibly epic journey. We spent almost 2 years and hundreds of people participated. There's like 10,000 different comments on the Google Doc that were integrated. creating a constitution. And it's one of the most beautiful documents that I've ever read in my entire life. That's not an understatement. And I highly recommend going and checking that one out. Likewise, we did a SEEDS guide. So this is a breakdown of the entire economic, governance, financial system, and everything that SEEDS is and how it operates. And we'll get into some of the ways that we've designed it, but it's about 170 pages and it's all of it. So if you kind of want to get the whole story, go and see that. We built that wallet that I was sharing with you before, and you can do a bunch of different things with it. And then also this passport. So there's a forum in the passport. So I was talking about different ways to get compensated. We're about to add this, and we will if the citizens really want it. But when you're in the forum, participating and sharing ideas, adding on to proposals, just introducing yourself or connecting with others, when you're getting appreciated, when people are upvoting your stuff, saying, yep, we love what you're sharing, then you're earning reputation. So you can earn value in the community. And the more reputation you have, the more tokens that you're going to get. So that's the bigger your UBI, or universal earned income is the bigger your reputation is, right? And there's a bunch of different ways that you can earn reputation, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But either way, this is what we've been doing over the years, is building a bunch of different tools, testing, iterating, and going through this process of decentralized governance. So with that constitution, we had 8 citizen assemblies where on average about 50 different people attended. And we did this process of gathering information, condensing it, and then building it into the constitution. And we went through this process 8 different times. And each time that document fundamentally evolved. And that's really what decentralized governance is about, is bringing groups of people together, creating a shared container and purpose, and then using that collective wisdom to evolve an idea and move it forward. So we've just been iterating and doing that the last few years and watching the process evolve. So how did we design SEEDS? This is kind of at the heart of what's so interesting here, because we built it to be evolvable. We knew that people were going to govern this and change it. So every setting in the economic system is laid out in that SEEDS guide. And every setting can easily be changed on chain with no humans required. So once we find that minimum viable, well, not minimum viable, once we find a good beta product that we're happy with, there's a future potential where you actually don't need developers to continue to evolve SEEDS. Because once you have all your settings laid out, then how decentralized governance works is someone puts up a proposal that says, hey, we want to change this setting from 1 to 7. And that's going to have this type of impact on the system, et cetera, explains their idea. There's a dialogue about it. Maybe the idea evolves, et cetera. You go through decentralized governance. But if that goes up for a proposal and that proposal passes under whatever criteria they're deciding is necessary for that proposal to pass, which is also something that could be evolved. This is a very meta game. This is getting down to the roots and saying, we get to design every algorithm that affects us. Instead of today where we're affected by Facebook's algorithms and we have no way of giving feedback or participating in them or even knowing what they do for that matter, we're saying actually every system that affects us, they've got to be transparent and they're evolvable directly by anyone who's impacted by them. Because if you're not able to participate in the evolution or how all of the protocols that affect our lives that they're designed, then we don't really have freedom. We have this illusion of it. So in this particular game we're building, we're saying, no, everything is up for evolution and discussion and dialogue and evolution and etc. And it's going to keep happening. So anyway, how decisions are decided is a governance parameter too, which is way outside the scope of this to really get into the fullness of it. But there's plenty of different videos on that. So if that proposal passes, that setting changes from 1 to 7, and then the economy shifts and a different behavior happens. So for example, with our economics, with our financial system, we wanted stable money. We wanted a currency that's neither inflationary nor deflationary. And we have a protocol there. We can say if economic growth is 2.5%, then we need to be growing at 2.5% in order for it to be not inflationary or deflationary. But we can actually set that to 3.5%. Maybe we want 1% inflation, because that's going to give people more tokens and we think we can handle it. 1% inflation is okay. Maybe we want 7% inflation. Maybe we want negative 5% inflation. Fine, that's a setting and we can evolve it and we can experiment with different things. So that's in every element of the SEEDS economy is designed this way for us to be able to evolve and iterate on. something else I really wanted to bring to attention is this idea that we have multipliers for what your contribution is for companies based on how regenerative they are. So for example, you get rewarded for exchanging seeds, but you can imagine that maybe Amazon might come in and start accepting seeds, and then all of a sudden they make up 98% of the economy and they're sucking all the rewards, right? So what we said is actually there's a multiplier. If you're degenerative, your multiplier is 0, meaning whatever you did, it doesn't matter, you're going to get no rewards. So Amazon can still come in, they can still help the economy and have fee-free transactions, better than Visa, but they're not going to suck all the value out of the system, because the value, the money that we're creating and minting, just like Bitcoin's 10 billion, all the 10 trillions from central banks, the money that's being minted and distributed out, that money is directed towards those who are doing regeneration, because we need to regenerate our world right now. So we're saying, nope, if you're a reputable organization, which means you're actually trying to make steps towards being a better org, then your multiplier is 1. You're going to earn normal rewards. If you're sustainable, you've actually made that step, you're going to go up to 1.2. If regenerative, it goes higher, if you're thriving, etc. So as organizations make the transition to be doing better for people and planet, paying people a better wage, using better supply lines, localizing their entire economic systems, etc., then those organizations are going to get paid more. So what we've done is we created a financial incentive. But again, all of this is tweakable. How organizations are regenerative, those are all things that we have to design as a community, and we get to tweak, and we get to keep evolving and updating the system. So that's what's so beautiful, is we're just laying the foundation to say, here's a minimal viable economy that we can evolve with. We're building all of these different economic primitives is what we've called them. And then this gives us a blueprint to start from and to keep using to evolve and get better. But the intention and the design always to be, how do we create a regenerative economic system so that we're living in the right relationship with our earth, so we can build a world worthy enough for our children and worthy enough for us. Like, we can have such a beautiful world if we just focused on getting it done. So anyway, this is kind of the idea behind the foundation of the SEEDS economic system and how it works. So now we're going to get into those contribution scores a little bit more that I told you about. So for example, individuals, and again, this is version 1.0. We can change this any way we want. What we've done is we've created this concept of a contribution score. This concept that you can contribute directly to society and then society will pay you. So instead of central banks creating 10 trillions and that going to the military industrial complex to bail out banks, and basically central banks, they reward insiders. So central bank money makes money, gives it to insiders. They benefit, wealth concentrates, we know that story. Bitcoin rewards mining. Okay, let's create a financial system that rewards a plethora of contributions, right? So that's the basic structure, but we're a regenerative economy, so we're focusing all of our stuff on regeneration. And this is social regeneration too, not just ecological regeneration, right? And of course, true regeneration means there is no difference between those things, right? The true idea behind regeneration is reuniting with Earth, understanding that we are one living system. Humans and Earth are no different than the biology that's living on our arm is different from us, right? We're one organism. If we die, they die, vice versa. Well, if they all die, we get really sick and our immune system's disrupted, which why we have so many autoimmune disease, but I digress. Anyway, so the idea is we get to have this concept. So where did SEED start? It said, all right, for version 1.0, if you're an individual, then you're going to get rewarded the more seeds that you have staked. So everyone who's been buying and planting seeds, this has increased your contribution score, which if we were running the harvest, and depending on when you watch this video, we might be pre or post running the harvest. When we're running the harvest, you're going to get more from having planted those seeds. Great. So we're saying if you commit value to the ecosystem, if you buy seeds and you lock them away, that's contributing. That's helping the ecosystem grow. It's providing us a more healthy financial foundation. Excellent. So if you're doing that, then we're going to reward you. But simultaneously, like other ecosystems are saying, hey, take our token and lock it. That's the best way to contribute. But we're a financial system. Those are kind of opposite ideas. If Bitcoin's supposed to be the currency of the future, you want to use it as a currency to exchange, not just buy it, lock it away, and put it in your key and leave it in the ground for 10 years, which is generally the best advice with Bitcoin is buy it, hold on to it, do nothing. It's like, well, if we're a currency, we actually want incentives to spend this. So that's the other way you contribute, is actually spending it with a diversity of people. So the more you use it and the more people you use it with, the higher your contribution is. Again, this is how we have a better than free currency, because there's no transaction fees, and the more you use it and the more you're using with different people, the more you're going to get paid. On top of that, when those previous rewards for regenerative organizations, when you're buying from them, you're getting a bigger bonus if they're more regenerative. So this is aligning both sides. Now it's better for you to go and shop at that more expensive place because they're actually more regenerative and doing better for people and planet, because you're going to get a bigger reward buying from them than if you bought from a degenerative organization. And again, this is all the cool fun we can have. Okay, interlude. I'm talking about games and using systems and protocols to, incentivize our behavior. In one perspective, this is a very disgusting thing. If the perspective is you're a small group of people and you're thinking, how do we design a system to affect a lot of others and manipulate them? I think they call this marketing today, but anyway, to manipulate them to do something that may or may not be in their best interest. How do we do that? I want to shut that entire idea down, because we're designing a system that affects us. So it's no longer like, how do we manipulate other people? The thinking has to be, how do we design a system that I would like to be a part of? So when we're gamifying this and designing it and creating protocols to encourage behavior, we remember that it's our behavior that's being encouraged. So let's do it in beautiful ways. And I think that's been at the heart of Seeds since day one. So we're designing these protocols because we would like to be rewarded this way. I would love it if the incentive out there was for me to go shop at the more regenerative store because I'm going to get more rewards on my credit card. Like, heck yes. Like, I'd love that idea, So anyway, it's stuff that we've built into it, right? The other side, so on the top of the individual contributing is the economic contribution. It's important, we're an economic system. But on the bottom is the social contribution. That's important because we're a society as well. So this is what our economic system completely forgot about. It's just money on money. If it's good for the economy in a paper money sense, then it's good. Everything else is externalities. So we've got to break down that externality concept altogether and start baking in humans and planet right into the foundation of the economy, which is what we're doing with all these contribution scores. So your societal contribution is both on community building, and there's a wide number of ways you can do community building. Again, it's a blueprint. It's a foundation that we can build on. So we have this concept of community building and rewarding you for community building. Great, how do we want to do that? There's been a whole bunch of different ideas. Some's like, hey, if you help people set up a seed bank, you're going to earn community building points. If you're actually hosting festivals locally and bringing people together, everyone who comes there scans your phone and there's a QR code exchange, and they get some points for showing up and you get some points for hosting it, and you own a bunch because you put it on and 100 people scanned your phone, etc. There's a million ways we can build on top of how you get rewarded for building community, if we want to encourage that and if that's something that we enjoy, right? And the other side is reputation. And reputation's big. It's how much people are vouching for you. Or if they're flagging you, you could lose reputation. So if you're doing harmful things to the ecosystem, you can get flagged. And your reputation is a multiplier. So all of these have fixed scores, but your reputation multiplies all the rest of them. So if you have no reputation, then it doesn't matter how much you're transacting. You're not going to earn any rewards at all. And this is how the system actually defends itself. The people who come in that try to attack, we can flag them, and we do. They lose their reputation. They get no benefit because the rewards need to pay off over time and they're slow down, blah, blah, blah. So there was no real incentive. So they did a whole bunch of effort, got no reward, and so far that policing effort's been working. So anyway, that's the concept behind reputation. But the inverse of that is the more regenerative you are, the more reputation you're building in the community by showing up and having more people vouch for you, etc., etc., then the more rewards you're going to get everywhere else. So we put a lot of emphasis on what is your reputation in the community, which then puts reputation and your social contribution above the economic contribution. Because if reputation's zero, then your economic contribution doesn't matter, right? And the same concept is over here then for organizations, where organizations, their form of reputation is their regenerative reputation. Are they regenerative for people and planet? Because that's the only criteria we need to be holding these organizations accountable to. You don't care what their bottom line is. Well, it's a part of it. That's their transaction volume over here. That's their economic contribution. That's included. But we care how much they're regenerating people and planet, because that's what needs to happen right now. And I must have been highlighting this when someone had a comment on it when I took the screenshot. But anyway, so how regenerative you are as a business, that's your multiplier for the other ones. And then the other ones is, again, how much you're transacting. So we made a better than free currency potentially for businesses. And again, this is how we flip the script. How do we get people to step away from central bank money, especially as they're moving to central bank digital currencies and trying to concentrate power and wealth? It's really interesting and kind of chaotic what's happening right now and what moves nation states are taking right now to have more control of the old financial systems. So it's more important than ever that we step into financial systems that are powered by the people. But let's also throw some fuel on that fire. Not good, let's not do that. Let's throw some more seeds into the garden and let's reward transaction volume for regenerative organizations, right? But we could do something else, and this is where the social contribution comes on, and this is also fundamentally game-changing, is we can reward an organization that builds applications that have a lot of use. A lot of people in the community find value in them. We're just going to pay you as an organization for having produced that. How do we get rid of the moral hazard or the economic misalignment of Facebook? Facebook, maybe it started off with good intentions, maybe it didn't, doesn't matter. But the story is we wanted to build something to help people connect. Beautiful story. People were connecting, it was lovely. But then the algorithms turned evil because their real intention was we want to suck value out of this thing because we have no other way to monetize. So we have to turn people into a product. Again, I would say that's an economic failure. What if part of those tens of trillions of dollars central banks are making recently, what if some of that money went to Facebook to say, hey, you built a public good. You're helping people connect. That's really beautiful. We're going to pay you as long as people's lives are more improved because of what you're building. Fundamentally changes the game because now they're thinking, oh, well, we're going to get paid more the more people are getting value out of what we're doing and the more it's improving their lives. So now maybe our algorithms are going to be designed differently. Now that maybe they're not designed to make you most acceptable to the advertising they're throwing at you. Maybe they're most designed for human connection and for really building social systems that we're happy with. So this is how we can start realigning those incentives. So how many people are using your application? We're going to pay for you. That's also how, that local food platform that we talked about, so many peer-to-peer food platforms have failed because they couldn't figure out a monetization strategy that worked. We kind of think, well, if this is an economy that we actually grow and adopt and people accept this more and we make this thing real by deciding it's real, then we fix that. Because now that local food application, if a lot of people are using it, well, there's a lot of transaction volume. A lot of seeds are moving through that. A lot of people are using their application. They're pretty regenerative because they're localizing food systems. So them as an organization, they're going to earn a lot of value. And the last one that we missed was the community contribution is bringing people in. So if you're referring people, bringing them on the learning journey, which is what we care about, because when someone joins, they're a visitor. Just like systems that we're pretty used to today, we wanted to use familiar language to help people understand the complexity here. But when people show up, they're a visitor. Once you move through the system, you get vouched for, you start participating, etc. You move to resident and citizen. So the reward is only when they move to resident and citizen. So we get rid of the, spam invite a whole bunch of people because we're going to get paid. We say, no, only people who actually show up, participate in the community and progress we care about. So we're looking for quality over quantity here with how people contribute. But again, one more time, these things are the primitives. Version 1.0, these concepts is something we can grow on. So the main concepts are we want to reward organizations for how much they're contributing to people, planet, and prosperity. And we're going to build an economic system that says, hey, the most profitable thing for you to do as a business is to serve people, planet, and prosperity. Think about how best to do that, and you're going to get rewarded the most. And if we can design an economic system that says that's the game, I think we can solve a lot of our problems right now. Where, for example, it's more incentive driven for Bayer, who just merged with Monsanto, who makes the poison that they put on the food that causes the cancers that Bayer is selling you the pills for. That's a perfect model in the previous economic system. They're making a ton of money. They have repeat customers. Fantastic. That's a serious problem. So that's the economic system's fault. When we keep blaming the people playing the game, what we're saying is, hey guys, you're great game players. We hate you. It's weird. Like, yes, it's morally corrupt, potentially, however you want to look at it, but I think that entire framework, and I'm being very opinionated here, is probably broken. I think instead we say those people are great players at games. great. They could be great players over here. Let's create a different system. And a lot of those people are beautiful people. They want to do the right thing. They're using the story that, yes, capitalism sucks, but it's the best thing we have. So if we design a new economic system that says, hey, great players, come over to here, shift your talents now towards exploiting people and planet, to regenerating people and planet, then we can build that feedback loop that moves us in the direction that we need to go. So again, this is the thinking and designing that we've been through over the years. And one more example that I want to put on, so we can make better than free money. Great, we can align those incentives. We can get rid of the incentives for it to be better to have people sick than healthy. Great. Know something else disgusting in our old society? Planned obsolescence. We're building products right now as companies to intentionally break down at a certain period. Things that were made a century ago last longer than things that are made today. And this isn't a secret, because the business logic is once I sell something, I make money. I don't care if they use it, if they put it in their storage shed, if it lights on fire, it doesn't matter. They don't care about that. They just want to sell it to you. So it created this whole industry of marketing where they make up things that you need because they just want to impulsively have you buy something because then they win. And they don't care if you use it. All these misaligned incentives. But imagine this, we can actually track things that are used. If we want to. Again, none of this has to be coercive. We're building these systems, so it's not the nanny state controlling us. It's us designing systems that we want to have because we enjoy it and we're in control of it and it's transparent. Okay? So anyway, we can track the use of items. So for example, we could track the use of a phone. And every time somebody uses that phone, we can reward them. We can put over here a new type of contribution category if we want. And we could say product use volume, you know? And every time somebody uses your product, we're going to say, hey, you did a social good. Somebody appreciated something you made. You obviously made their life better. You met a need. You did something they actually needed because they're actually using your stuff. We're going to reward you for that. Now we've just completely fundamentally changed the game. Now, instead of selling 1 million lawnmowers, you want to sell 1 lawnmower and have the entire neighborhood using that thing 24/7 and it for last 100 years. But in fact, we don't want to sell lawnmowers. I don't like that example. Grow food, not lawns. It's just lawnmowers, just a simple example of things we could share easily. But let's not share lawnmowers unless we're mowing between the beautiful forests of food that we're growing in our gardens and yards. Opinions there. But again, we could track the use, but we've realigned incentives because now product makers and manufacturers, they want their stuff to last. They want it to last forever. They want it to be easy to repair, so they're going to make it repairable. We're doing the opposite today, and it's nonsense. We're building an economic system that's taking our earth, converting it to garbage, and putting it into a landfill as fast as possible. We want to say, great, we want to build stuff. We're going to use materials from the earth. Let's do that thoughtfully. Let's make sure people actually want those things, that they're going to add value to our life. It's not just junk that's cluttering up our lives. And let's make sure they're going to last a really long time. Let's value this gift from the earth by being responsible with it. It's very basic. And we can actually track the use of those items and pay people. That simple method that we could bake right into our economic system. It's happening already with Internet of Things. They're already knowing how often you're using stuff. Technology's already there. It's just being used to exploit us. We could take that same technology and use it to help us be regenerative. And I think that's kind of the shift here. We're taking all of this degenerative technology, financial systems, economic systems, governance systems, all these things that have been used to exploit us. So naturally, we probably resist them. The anarchist in me is like, burn the system, a decade or two ago. And I imagine a lot of people are there because these tools were used to exploit us. But those same organizing and coordinating tools can be used to free us if we're in control and if they're transparent and if we have a direct relationship with them, right? That was a lot. So, contribution scores. It's a primitive that fundamentally changes our economic systems. Go explore the guide if you want to dive deeper. There's so much good stuff in there. Highly recommended. All right, so let's try to simplify things. We just went huge. Now, what is SEEDS? SEEDS is a currency. It's a currency that people directly govern the inflation rates. Because inflation is not necessarily a bad thing, especially in a regenerative context. Let me tell you a story. If we have a sound money, that's going up in value, and it's going up in value more than the value you can earn sustainably harvesting a forest, then we've just created an incentive to clear cut that whole forest, sell it for this money, and then just sit in money. So we created an economic incentive to turn forests into digits in a computer. And again, that's exactly what's happening on our planet. We have all these incentives where it's better to take our natural capital, the living, breathing earth that we share, that we need to survive, and converting it into digits in a computer that only mean things because we've socially agreed them to mean things. Once we really start breaking it down, it's completely insane. So, exploring that idea in more depth, if you would like to, there's a video here. Dive into that. It's a nice long one that really helps explain what we mean by this new type of economic system. And if you're all familiar with crypto and what's happening there, it helps paint the picture too with where Seeds fits into the whole cryptocurrency scene and all that. Which were fundamentally different then. I was going to put in a slide, but I didn't. But Seeds is already carbon neutral. In fact, we actually made the chain that we're running on carbon neutral because of how many trees we've already subsidized planting. And that's not talking about all the other, social and ecological regeneration we've been doing over the years, which I'll get into at the end of this when I do a recap of our progress. Okay, so we were doing governance, and we were figuring out building a new economic system, new governance system, and there's just a whole bunch of people showing up together and doing stuff. But now small groups started asking themselves, well, who are we? Now we're forming complex organizations, we're building tools, we have developer teams, and we're dealing with funding and finance. And it's like, well, we need to organize. But we can't set up some legal entity, because we can't have legal control over this thing. Plus, we are a global organization anyway. So we were really interested in DAOs. And this was 5 or 6 years ago. There's no DAO tooling out there. But we just needed some. We needed to be able to pull our capital together, be able to have a shared treasury where we can manage that together, just basic stuff. We had to, coordinate, and there wasn't a legal entity that we could design to be able to do our needs. That wasn't going to cost us millions and millions of dollars in lawyer fees, which we didn't have. Okay, so we started designing our own type of organization systems, which we call the DAO. But we call it a DO. Instead of DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, we call it a DO, decentralized human organization, which is kind of fundamentally different because Seeds can be a DAO. I was telling you about the economic system, how it could automatically update. It could be autonomous. You actually don't need humans. If we ever create the perfect primitives, because humans actually probably already, humans are only needed to build new code. All of the economic protocols that we have laid out in the guide right now, I think it's like 90% of them are already built. So you don't need a human to change that setting anymore. So we would call that a DAO. It's where you don't actually need humans to make sure an action happens in order for it to happen. It's kind of like with Bitcoin. Like the protocol is just going to keep running and people get to show up and earn Bitcoin or not. So Bitcoin was the first DAO, right? But we said we're not a DAO. We're not trying to automate ourselves. We're humans. We're humans coming together wanting to coordinate a more effective way. So we built a DO. We put the human right at the center of it. We're not trying to automate the human out. We're trying to really serve humans. But we want to make sure it's fraud resistant. We want to make sure that it can be global. We want to make sure that it's transparent. And we want to explore a whole bunch of different governance strategies that aren't even possible in legal companies and legal contexts. So how do we design an organization that we can program? That's a really powerful idea. That can help us coordinate. So this is what we started a beautiful long journey down. If you want to get the whole story of what we've built so far, check out this video. I'm personally in love with it. Moving on. All right, so this is what we built. We call it a DAO, or a DO. This is our dashboard. You can click here and actually explore Hyphas and what's going on there. But I'll just give you a very brief overview. You can see your whole... Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you more than a brief one. Let me show you what's going on here. It's nice. So I'm just going to give you a real brief overview of the DO. You can click here and you can see your landing page for your organization. So this is Hypha. This is one of the organizations I'm a part of. So this is me getting into it. So Hypha is a DO. It's a decentralized human organization. This is how we've been operating for the last 3 years. Not actually with this one. This is the prototype of the one that we're launching. So I'm actually showing you this one. But if you want to look at the one that we're using right now, go to dho.hypha. You can see how it's spelled here, .earth. And you can go check out our DO and how we make decisions and how we govern and how we spend funds. And our entire organization is there transparent. It's pretty cool. So this would be your organization. It would look like this. You'd see the different circles that exist in your organization. And you could think of circles as just, it's hold-ons within your organization. So it's like departments and companies. Or in a village context, for example, it might be health and food and housing or whatever. It's however you're dividing up subsets of people within your organization. Because then they have their own treasury
and their own governance process. So they get to decide and how they spend their money and funds. So that's kind of the idea behind circles. And badges give you certain powers and rights and responsibilities. There's archetypes, which is simplifying the different ways that you can contribute to an organization. We found that to be overwhelmingly complex is trying to give numbers to how people are showing up. So we actually built a framework for helping simplify that for groups. And of course, this is all evolvable and adaptable, and you can do what you need. Policies for groups and organizations. Okay. You can come here and see all the different proposal categories you can make. So organization assets is how you evolve the organization itself, and there's a whole bunch of categories here. Recurring activities, so instead of having to make a new claim every time you did an activity into a DAO, you can actually take up a role that I was talking about, or have a recurring expense, or badge assignment, and one-time activities to capture everything else. All right, so that's all I'm gonna really do on the do, because we have so much to cover on the other side, so I'm gonna head back over there. Yes, the Hypha DHO, totally in love with it. I didn't share with you one part, but you can actually see all the organizations that you're part of too and easily navigate to them. We want to have a beautiful map like this to show all the different regenerative villages, so we make it easier to go from one to the next, and you have tokens, so you can sell one village's tokens to move to the next one, etc., etc. So we're trying to build this integrated ecosystem, and that's why Hypha is called Hypha. It's actually, as you see here, it's kind of the hairs on the end of the mycelial network. And the mycelial network is that fungal mushroom network that connects healthy forests and ecosystems. And trees and plants and animals can actually use this network to send resources through to other plants. So trees can actually send nutrition to other trees of a forest. Trees can actually communicate and say, hey, you know, this pathogen's attacking us, and we've actually figured out what to put into our pollen in order to repel it. So we're going to tell you to start developing that. We're going to give you the chemical formula for this pollen, send it across the mycelial network, and other plants and species across are able to, you know, learn from this. So anyway, this is why we called it Hypha, is because we wanted to mirror how healthy ecosystems operate and to build technology that helps our communities and our movements do that, operate as an ecosystem. But problem with that, it's hard to coordinate a single global organization. It's hard to set up one DAO, let alone the multiple of DAOs that we're building. Like, how do we organize as an interconnected ecosystem? We needed to discover patterns to help us coordinate, because that's what we saw in our journey to create seeds. Is we actually set up Hypha at the start of it and thought this could be the one organization that captures all the humans. So everyone who's contributing in a role, every single person that could be part of the Hypha, and we could have a circle for every major thing that seeds needed. And we wanted to put that all into Hypha as one organization. But very quickly we learned this didn't work. Just like our bodies don't have one organ, we have a liver, we have a heart, we have a spleen, we have lungs, etc. We have multiple organs because they all behave a little bit differently. And this is what we're finding, because Hypha was focused on the technology. So people who are focused on, you know, process and deep learning and governance and all these really important things too, they couldn't find a space in Hypha because the current Hypha members are like, hey, you know, we're too focused on this one thing, we can't vote for your proposal, or we don't think that's the right focus right now, or whatever. So we actually realized, nope, we need to look like an organism, where each organization is like an organ in the whole. And we started designing what that actually looked like. So this is us exploring, you know, social coordination patterns. And one of those ways of doing that is seasons here. Highly recommend to go check out the seasons pattern more. There's also a video on it here. Definitely check this one out, but it's, for example, in all of our ecosystems, we're trying to do onboarding 24/7. We're trying to do governance 24/7. We're trying to do on-the-ground activities 24/7. We're trying to find time for ourselves, for personal development, to just take a breather, and we're trying to squeeze that in somewhere. So what we're seeing is a lot of burnout. Too much things happening all the time, and we're unfocused and we're chaotic. Nature goes through cycles. It's not summer 24/7 and winter 24/7 and fall 24/7. Like if it was, it would be chaotic, right? We're not just always out breath, we're out breath, in breath. So it's like, how do we design ecosystems that coordinate around this? And that was the concept behind seasons. So it's like, what if in spring, that's our growth season? So this is when we do onboarding. All of our organizations that are part of this alliance, let's say, you know, we're all gonna focus on onboarding on a spring season. And this doesn't have to happen during spring in our ecological, you know, earthly cycles. Spring is just a concept. So we can say we can do a spring season and it could be July, it doesn't matter. But a spring season is like spring on an ecological cycle where it's all about growth, new growth. We were just in a hibernating, winter mode, and now it's about germinating the new seeds, and the new generation of life is born. And then summer, that life lives out. Fall is when it kind of mates and it reproduces, and winter is when it goes to sleep and it hibernates. And then next spring is all the babies from the last generation grow up and start a new form of life. And that's the process of cyclical evolution in a very small nutshell and package. So what if our organizations could follow a similar rhythm, So spring, anyway, go check out the seasons pattern. You'll learn more about that one. It's pretty good. Okay, we'll keep going. So then after this point in our journey, you're like, wow, okay, so we've built new types of financial systems and governance systems and organization systems and the foundational primitives for an economic system. I think we just created a new type of economic system. Could these tools work for the foundation of new types of civilizations? What is a 21st century civilization going to look like? What do our civilizations that humanity needs in order to survive this century, reverse climate change, reverse and all of the chaos that we're headed towards right now, and instead build the most beautiful world we can? What does that look like? So that's our new kind of approach. It's like we have all of these tools, we've gained this momentum, we have this DNA. How do we redirect this and get really practical about on the ground new systems, designing regeneration and building different types of civilizations? So this is when it got really meta for us. We're like, okay, there's a lot that we can take on here. But when SEEDS was named, it was named with this intention. That it's a tool set, it's a process, it's a community, it's a knowledge base, it's a learning journey about sowing equitable and ecological and decentralized societies. Decentralized mean we're distributing, and we'd probably use distributed these days more so than decentralized, but we're distributing value out, we're not concentrating it. The old systems are about monoliths, concentrating energy to the top. We need to be about pushing that energy out to the sides, decentralizing everything. This is governance, this is finance, this is organization, this is who controls the protocols, it's all of it. We need to push that energy and the decision making out. They need to be ecological, because if we're not living in light relationship with our planet, again, none of this stuff matters. They need to be equitable, because, and this is the big key, they need to be forkable, and our right to exit is going to be minimal. To move from one civilization style to the next needs to be as easy as, okay, I'm deleting that app, selling these tokens, all right, closing down that membership, and I'm going here. And you need to be able to spend maybe a couple hours tops kind of transitioning from one economic governance financial system to another one. And if the right to exit is that easy, the systems have to think, how do we be equitable? How do we most distribute value intelligently to our community? How do we most align with the values of the people that are part of us? Because if we're not, they can leave. And this is what our nation states thought they were designing, is something that was free like that. Because if they're not able to use coercion, which is what every nation state's about today, is more force, more totalitarianism, more control, that's how we're going to rein people in. If you're able to exit like that, you have to fundamentally rethink it. How do I attract people, right? How do I retain people? How do I make my system something beautiful that people would want to be a part of? And I don't mean mine, I'm talking about SEEDS. I'm thinking that is the thoughts that any catalyst who's going out there creating a new type of civilization structure needs to think from. It's not, okay, I have a huge military, what can I force on my people? It's, okay, I'm creating a new type of economic system because we want one. How do we attract people? How do we encourage people to join us? How do we inspire people? Right? So this is the big part of what's happening in Web3, is that right to exit is being diversified and granted and solidified in our ability to be like, we can choose what type of economic systems we want to be a part of. This is also why we think SEEDS needs to be free, and even better than free to use, because if people can choose that easily what type of currency they want to use, are they going to use one with fees or ones that are free, or better than free, ones that align with their values? So this is how SEEDS has been designing itself from a business logic perspective, is how do we be the best for people and planet? How do we do as much good we can for everyone who's a part of it? And that needs to be at the founding ethos of what we're setting up here. Otherwise, we have nothing here at all, right? So SEEDS is really about a community. So it starts off that way. SEEDS is a community on a learning journey, designing our own protocols. It didn't start off with a white paper, here's what we're going to build. It started off with a white paper that turned into a game guide that evolved more than 15 different times. It's like, it's been this constant evolution. So it is a community of people coming together being like, yes, we need to build a regenerative civilization. We understand this is something we need to do. I want to be part of this journey. I'm here to make it happen. And most people that I'm connecting with in this ecosystem are driven by that, are driven by this passion to build something better because we know we need to and because we can. So fundamentally, Seeds is that community. And it's a community that's going to help you in your business and your activism efforts regenerate our planet. That's what it's all about. It's helping us scale coordination. We all share this vision. Great. Let's exit together. And if the hundreds of millions of people across the earth, it's like, I want to opt out of that story, probably more than that now, and we say, great, come opt into one that's going to regenerate the planet too, it's like it's the death of the old system, because then we fulfilled Buckminster Fuller's prompt. We made something just better that made the old one obsolete and made the old one look like history books are going to look back at that and still call it the Dark Ages. Because we hadn't moved past this idea of centralized top-down control and enslavement of others. We didn't move past that, so how could we call ourselves enlightened? We're not free, right? Well, we are, but our systems try to enslave us. Let's remember that. Anyway, right, carrying on. So, I was talking about before, organize as organisms. What do we mean? Let's literally look at organisms. It's called biomimicry. Let's mimic those biological systems with our organization system. So this has been, again, at the heart of our design and process and evolution for the last 11 years. And this is the organization structure we've kind of come up with right now. And let me talk about that a little bit more. This is what it actually looks like today. So this is the Seeds Commons. This is a group of organizations that have all banded together within Seeds to help it grow. So at one point in time, it was just Hypha building tools. But very quickly over the years, we've grown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 8 or 9 different organizations have spawned up within Seeds. And they've all banded together to create this new organization. That's Seeds ecosystem, right? So just like with our bodies here, we move energy and we move energy and blood, like calling that value because that's what we would call it in our economic systems, to the different organs and parts of our body depending on what we're trying to do. We're getting ready to run, blood goes down from our head and goes into our legs. We're digesting food into the stomach. We're thinking really hard into the brain, etc., right? So this is how our organism operates. It's sensing what it needs to do as a whole ecosystem. It's sending value to different organs, sending energy and resources to different organs, etc. So this is what we've designed here. We have all the different needs of an ecosystem. Not all of them. We still are growing. This thing will grow. Lots more organizations are wanting to come in and feel a different organ's need. I would imagine we would have, we'll see. We'll see how much it grows. Anyway, and that's the other thing that we're actually doing here, and this is important, is it's an emergence. We're kind of holding space. It is just like a birth. You know, the midwife's not creating the baby. The midwife is holding space for this baby to be born, right? And that's kind of what we're doing here is we're holding space, we're holding to our principles and values, and we're seeing what emerges. You know, that's how we emerged from one organization into many. If it was the capitalistic world, we would have forced everything into ours, would have gone into IP battles with these other organizations and fought them and spent time and energy and resources looking at them as competitors and all this nonsense that happens. But instead, we let that emergence happen and we said, oh, we're actually evolving as an ecosystem from single cellular to multicellular, right? Like we're going through this evolutionary process. Let's watch that happen. So to be honest with you, I don't know where this is going. None of us knows. We're experiencing it, and we're just making maps, which is what I'm doing here, after it's happened. So things are happening and emerging, and I'm just kind of documenting it. I feel like more of an anthropologist than an architect. So anyway, what are our organs in our new ecosystem here? Ecological and social regeneration, right at the top, this is important. So this is how we as an ecosystem fund that. So the Seeds Commons itself, it's the one that manages a budget. So it's kind of like, how do we do nation state budgeting better, which I'll get into a little bit more later. But in short order, it makes the decision of what are we doing. So when your body makes the decision, we're running, blood down to the legs. We as an ecosystem are thinking, what are we doing? Are we trying to grow right now? Is there a lot of people wanting to come in? Do we need to fund the Ambassador Academy for the next season because we're going to have an onboarding session and welcome in a lot of new energy? Or are we in a summer season and we want to get on the ground and do regeneration festivals and actually get our hands in the dirt, plant trees, build community, and do the real outside, off the computer, community building, festival, having fun work of regeneration and play? Then that's regenerative civics. But maybe that season's completely different than the nurturing one. And probably those people who are doing all the onboarding, they want to attend those festivals. So this is what I'm talking about, of moving value through the ecosystem. That's us too. That's us holding roles in organizations. So on one season, we're over here welcoming in new people because that's what the ecosystem needs. Next season, we shift. And you get to go, and now you can support over here because we need a whole bunch of more roles to go on the ground, plant gardens, set up local food systems, help economies set up new types of economic systems for themselves, plant gardens, set up nurseries, community, all of this stuff that we can do on the ground that's beautiful and amazing. Come on and help us do that too. And you're going to have a role, and we have resources to pay you, etc. And this is kind of how the ecosystem can operate for all our needs. So movement building. So this is, festivals and direct regeneration action. That's what I was talking about. Why up here, sorry, I kind of mixed them up, is this is designing templates. And actually, Regen Civics do. We're going to get into that one a little bit more later too. But it's an alliance of organizations helping regenerative civics projects the entire way. So what is their idea? How are they going to execute on it? How do they organize, et cetera, down the road. Because we need to help with that process of groups on the ground wanting to set up a village or wanting to set up a local food economy, whatever. Communication and growth, telling the story, documentaries, how-tos, explainers, what I'm doing here, etc. Tools, so this is where Hypha now exists. So Hypha started out as the only one, and now it just sits in this nice little organ here, where Hypha is now focused on building the tools for scaling coordination. So we've kind of relinquished trying to do all of these other activities for the seeds ecosystem and said, actually, we're just going to focus on building tools. So Hypha is now putting a lot of effort into that DO technology. So you can see that it's rapidly evolving now that we've shifted gears there. Marketplaces and circular economies. So there's some organizations that have built incredible tools, which we'll actually showcase in a little while, for setting up local economic systems and marketplaces. Co-learning and governance. So this is an ecosystemic need where we're actually coming together to do decentralized governance. So we need those working groups of people to look at the problem and come up with a solution and do those deep learning journeys to really understand the problem and the opportunity, etc. So this is where our future universities kind of exist. But instead of the university being a top-down, I'm the learned and you're the learnee relationship, it's being facilitated and we're all co-learners on this learning journey to try to see how we can best evolve and improve and know and grow together, right? So that's kind of the whole Seeds Commons ecosystem as it stands today. So this will probably expand over the next seasons as we mature. So if you actually look at the seasons model, definitely recommend to go look back at that. It talks about how we set up this structure each season. So the process of how we decide where we're going to shift value at in our organization, right? And what that looks like. And the one more thing that in an ecosystem like this, we can get rid of the concept of failure and of firing people, because so many organizations, they hold on to, people that they might not need. Maybe they hired a bunch of people because they were doing a storytelling sprint and they really needed to tell the story, but then they did a really good job telling the story. Now they don't need that anymore. Now they need people to onboard energy, and those aren't the right people anymore. So, hey, we got to let you go. And it's this scary situation. Or they're a really nice company, so they hold on to them and they try to make it work even though it's not a good fit. Instead, if we're operating as an ecosystem, it's like we're shifting energy to where it's needed. So if we don't need to storytell as an ecosystem anymore, great. Those people who are doing storytelling, we're infinite beings. We love diversity. We want to expand our capabilities and our knowledge. At least a lot of us do. We're here to create and to learn more. We want to move to a different organization when needed. We can experiment with something else. And this is how we can get better and we can learn more, right? So again, it's really cool because then as the thing shifts, it's like, hey, we're shifting from onboarding to communication. Then those roles can just move with the money. So we don't have to fire people, right? Instead, it could be like, hey, shift over to this DAO. And then we've already built the UI where you can just hop over to that DAO and have a role. And in fact, most people are probably going to have roles in multiple DAOs anyway. And we're going to just be doing this stuff anyway. So instead of it being like I'm shifting entirely, it's like, well, I'm 80-20. And now I just shift to be 80-20 the other way, which is actually what I've been doing for the last 7 years between Seeds and Hypha, kind of balancing between these two organizations and more, and going into like region civics at points, helping at Renaissance Explorers at some points. So I think a lot of humans within this movement are doing that too, where they're contributing to a lot of different organs at the same time. And it gives us that flexibility and freedom. And this is really what I see as kind of the future of work, is this multicellular ecosystemic model. And I talked about getting rid of failure because the ecosystem knows what it needs and what to fund and advance. And all the tools are open source. So if we fund a technology being built and it's open source, we don't have a failure. If that particular product didn't work, well, I'm sure we learned from it. We already have the code if it did work. So even if their particular business logic failed them for whatever reason, if we even have that anymore, if we really use this to its full potential, but let's say it did, then those roles and those people that we've spent a lot of time onboarding and connecting with, we can reduce that turnover because they can just absorb into the other organs in the ecosystem. They don't have to go through a huge long onboarding process and offboarding and all of this wasted energy from the old systems and how they operate. So we can just be more effective and efficient too. And that's kind of the beauty of using permaculture principles when you're designing systems. Because it's like, well, we can live in right relationship with the earth, really take care of humans, and it could actually be more productive. Oh, great. I mean, aligning with nature is actually the best way to abundance. So anyway, we use those principles when we're designing how we organize as an ecosystem of organizations. So what else has Hypha been working on and Seeds been working on? We built a tech network that's interoperable with a whole lot of different blockchains. Again, Hypha's concept and whole life and being is connecting the healthy ecosystem. And there's a lot of different layer ones out there. Layer ones being different blockchains. For those not familiar with blockchains at all, don't worry about it. Think about them as different internets that aren't talking to each other. And we thought that was kind of a problem because there was a lot of potential that was being spread out really far and we were reducing our coordination potential. So for the last couple of years, we were building this kind of middle layer, which means if this middle layer talks to one of these different blockchains, then you could talk to the other ones. Because the middle layer is what your organization, your local economy, everything actually runs on top of. So that means we're giving communities a choice. You know, if you're working with Hypha and Seeds and you're building in our economic system, then you actually get to choose what layer one you want to be compatible with. Hypha's only integrated one at this moment, but we built this middle graph and we're integrating with a couple more right now, and it costs about $50,000 to $100,000 every new platform that we want to add. But then once we add them, then we add them and they're integrated into the system, which is pretty powerful. So using our ecosystem model, the Seeds community, they're like, hey, we want to be compatible with Polkadot. Great, then we're going to redirect some funding from the Seeds Commons to Hypha and ask them to make us compatible with this new ecosystem. Hypha being the tech organ is like, great, we're going to take this new funding and energy and we're going to build this thing out. So that's, again, how the ecosystemic model kind of works, right? Whew. Okay, we're going to take a pause there.